So yeah, resourcing, diversity and getting it right. I don't expect any of you to know VECeDA. We only launched it a couple of weeks ago, but it stands for values, equality, respect, culture, inclusion, diversity and accessibility. Now I wanted to moonwalk on today, but I'm wearing flip-flops and I thought it might be a bit difficult, and that was one of the mistakes of not wearing socks with flip-flops today. It would have paid off, but there we go. Okay, so I just want to have a quick start by asking the audience, could you just stand up for me if you have a direct responsibility for resourcing in some capacity within your job? So please stand up if you are resourcing direct responsibility for your organisation. So it's about roughly half the audience. Now, stay standing if you also have direct responsibility for diversity within your organisation. Or sit down if you don't have responsibility for diversity. Okay, so good. So we've got a number of people that have remained standing and a number of people also that have sat down. You can please sit down again now. Now, the reason I asked that is, if you'd sat down, actually the answer is, if you have a responsibility for resourcing in your organisation, you also have a direct responsibility for diversity within your role as an employer. The two actually go hand in hand. And I think what we've started to do is look at the fact that we have resourcing teams over here and we have diversity teams over here. And what we need to do is start to bridge the gap. Now, what I've got today, I've put together kind of a bit of an online magazine for you. Now, does anybody know who our cover girl is? Conchita, that's right. So Conchita was made famous by the Eurovision. Now, it was watched by 13 odd million people, 125 million people across Europe, about 13 in the UK. So a bearded transvestite won the world's largest singing contest and was voted by her peers and as being the most popular act. We also, alongside Conchita, have Michael Sam. Michael, many of you will not know Michael Sam. So he was the first NFL football player to come out as being gay in the leagues. Now, probably not the only gay American footballer, but he was the first one to come out. The reason that that's really important in today's society right now is we've moved to a time where people like Conchita, whose difference is very stark to somebody like Michael's, can actually become icons now. And it's much more accepted in our communities that this type of contrast of diversity exists, and it's celebrated by lots of different individuals transcending generations. Michael, again, important in the fact that NFL footballers are not seen as what we might necessarily in our biases see gay people representing. It's a macho, tough, rough, ready sport, and it's well known for being really hard. And actually, when you start to look at what Michael Sam has done for NFL and for the LGBT community, he's changing the face of how we have preconceived ideas of these types of individuals. Now, here we go. Now, why is that important in today's society? Well, if we look at Matt Lucas here, representing his character David, right? Now, David was a parody of himself, really, because Matt Lucas is obviously gay, and openly so in his industry. Now, if you're a young Welshman or a young whoever you are, and you're tucked away in your little village somewhere, and you're feeling like you are the only gay in the village, it's quite a lonely place to be. Yep. You feel alienated. You might even feel threatened by the individuals around you because you're not necessarily felt accepted. And it's very much a human trait for us to want to belong to certain groups. Now, obviously time has moved on, and the internet, as a phenomenon as it's been, has put people in a position where actually what we can now start to do en masse is reach out to people who are similar to us. Yeah? We can see representation of who we are instantly, globally. Now, it might not be acceptable in your little village to necessarily be out and be open and be who you are, but it's incredibly empowering for individuals to go out and see this difference en masse and being celebrated. So we're seeing an empowerment of human, and we know that now that he can't actually walk around saying he's the only gay in the village, because Grindr, a quick look on Grindr, and he can see instantly within his vicinity how many others representing, and they might not all be out in public either. Now, the reason this is empowering is we obviously know the internet has been an incredible phenomenon. We've now reached the point where every single ethnicity is using the internet as its preferred form of consuming information. Okay, it's overtaken TV just over a year ago. We now have over 4 billion connected individuals across the globe who are now using the internet. So I think that billion was reached, let's have a look, it was, the 3rd billion was reached at the end of 2014, okay? So we're incredibly connected. Now, where that leads us in terms of the recruitment part and how we leverage that for today's society. Now, we've got over 189 nationalities residing here in the UK, right? Now, London is considered the most diverse city on the planet. So we've got an abundance of diversity, and actually what we're looking at now is how that reflects on inclusion. Diversity without inclusion, counterproductive. We see what happens in Bradford, and we have race riots. So we're looking at how that diversity mix can be started to use in inclusive environments. Yep. Adults who have disabilities hidden within the workplace. Are your colleagues and your peers coming out to you as having hidden disabilities, and are they feeling comfortable? 1 in 4 adults of working age are from an ethnic background. So what we're looking at is the huge rise of diversity and how that can then be leveraged as organisations to really become attractive to the widest population. Now, you heard Matt just a minute ago talking about attraction and the journey, and the only way to attract is to have a great attraction journey. Well, actually, the only way to attract is to be attractive. Yeah? The law of attraction states you cannot attract something to you that is not attracted to you. Yeah? It's a physical impossibility to do that. And is your organisation attractive to a wide range of job seekers? Now, we at Vercida are likening this to what we call the red ocean, blue ocean strategy. Okay, and I'll talk about how red ocean, blue ocean works, but if I can give a sort of an analogy man pops out. What that looks like is the red ocean is really the job market right now. Yeah, we have more jobs available than skilled people to do those jobs. So the war for talent is well and truly on. The blue ocean is the place where everybody really wants to be. And I liken that to, if we think back 10 years ago, before the advent of the smartphone, we had the Blackberries, we had the Nokias, we had various other phones that had cameras on them, etc., and WAP. And actually then what happened was Samsung and an iPhone came along, game changers. They just completely wiped out the market. And now you see those other organisations have actually died. They're just simply not servicing markets anymore. And red ocean strategy really is where many employers are at. They're trying to get their cost per hire down, their time to hire down, the efficiency of the hiring process. But everybody's competing for the same talent. Yeah. And actually, when we're looking at things like job adverts, a job advert is a job advert, and it's really kind of dull, and we're thinking that the age of the job advert is dying out. What is the employer value proposition doing to leverage itself as part of the resourcing strategy to really communicate who you are as an employer? Now, when a candidate is faced with 2 opportunities here, and they're both job descriptions, and they're similar area, similar wage. Let's face it, wages are not rising in line with inflation, which means we're actually earning less. When we're looking at 2 job specs, and we can see one employer is talking about their internal inclusion. They're talking about the fact that they're members of Stonewall. They're talking about the work that they're doing with BME communities. They're talking about their flexible working. They're returning mothers' schemes. Now, what individuals are doing is they're looking at these employers and thinking, well, what's in it for me now? How am I going to differentiate between the employer and the jobs that are out there? And moving into the blue ocean is about leveraging all of the good work that goes on internally to become part of your resourcing strategy. Okay? Now, job seekers have got unconscious bias too. And they're making decisions about your brand, and actually they're deselecting themselves before they even come to you. Many organisations will say, well, we're inclusive, we've got open practices, anyone can come and apply for us here. We just don't get enough applications from the LGBT community, or we just don't get enough senior women, or people are not talking about their disability or disclosing it early on in the recruitment process. Well, why is that? Well, it's because they've been discriminated against it by those characteristics in the past. So they're fearful within the recruitment process of outing themselves. Research done by the Clear Company suggests that 74% of job seekers with a disability, and by the way, that represents 1 in 5 adults in the UK, will not disclose to a recruiter through fear of discrimination. And that's because the messaging is wrong about how the organisation is affecting change to become more disability confident in how they're communicating to job seekers. Okay? Now, Professor of Economics, Alison Ride, argues that more large companies are looking at diverse workforces. However, the recruitment of these individuals is a financial move and not necessarily a social one. We all know, well, we should do now, that diversity is good for the bottom line, and diverse organisations are outperforming non-diverse organisations when it comes to retention, attraction, and the profit at the bottom line. So it's vitally important that that on-point messaging of diversity is delivered at the moment somebody is looking at a job, okay? Not as part of a blog or a press release or an award that you won or an affiliation or accreditation. It's got to be at the moment they're looking at the job. What information are you tallying up to that? And actually, the correlation suggests that for every 1% in gender and BME increase in staff numbers, there's a 3 to 9% rise in profitability across that organisation. And when we're talking about large employers, those are big numbers. Okay, so other than that, why are large organisations like Pepsi really vying for the diversity trend? Well, business is about money. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Now, to get a profit share of the spend of those individuals makes excellent commercial gain, unless you get it wrong. We had just heard earlier that Pepsi got it vitally wrong and their brand decreased hugely. And why was that? Well, they thought there was a massive opportunity to go after the diverse spend. When you're operating from a point of view where the people who are trying to connect with those diverse audiences are not diverse, you've got a homogenous workforce, you have groupthink. You have similar people who are coming up with similar solutions, but they're not connecting to the audiences of that spend. And if we look at that spend, just here in the UK actually, the disability spend is £200 billion a year. Yeah? LGBT, over £100 billion a year. Ethnic spend, $300 billion. If you look at those numbers globally, that's a big wallet to go after. Yeah? If your organisation is similar to another organisation, i.e. you're a bank and you're green, or you're a bank and you're blue, and you're a bank and you're red, you kind of do the same thing really. You're just packaging it up in a different way. If you have brand association to those network groups and to those individuals, you become the provider of choice. So you're connecting. So it makes sense to have a diverse workforce to understand the spending habits of the individuals that you're trying to reach. Now, in cases where it goes horribly wrong, the campaign, as it's become known as for Pepsi, there are other organisations that are really getting it right. And if we look at L'Oreal, and the power of diversity has transformed their brand. Yeah. L'Oreal got to the point where they thought that they had saturated the market and their sales had started to stagnate. Growth had pretty much stopped. They were the market dominant leader. How could we reinvent ourselves to drive sales? They looked at things like just simple as foundation. And they came up with their 13 colours for. And what they did is they actually sat down with their teams internally and they looked at, well, how could we supply different shades of foundation to meet the skin colour and the skin tone of the audience that's buying it? It's not a one-size-fits-all market. Why are we trying to shoehorn products into these categories? And they, for a first time, used a male within one of their beauty campaigns. It's actually from the LGBT community, as they start to look at the rising trend of how consumers are aligning their share of wallet. Also, Heineken. I'm not going to be able to play this video for you today, but their Worlds Apart campaign, if you haven't seen it, watch it. Heineken are showing inclusion through their advertising to connect with that audience. Ethically, that puts them in a very strong position to be the brand of choice to those different individuals, but that's an example of how they got it right. So, I'm running over time, and I just wanted to leave you with that last note about Vercida. If you want to join your internal diversity message into your resourcing strategy, you'll see at least an increase of 30% of engagement from candidates who see themselves and the information that you're pushing out within that job description or within the marketing that you have. Now, if you want to connect with audiences, use the strength of your brand from other parts of your organization, bring it into your resourcing strategy. Thank you very much for your time today. Cheers.